Leaf fans, of course, spending Sunday recovering from that painful Game 7 loss on Saturday night. So if you're a fan of Canadian hockey, though, there is some good news.
Yes, there is still action on the ice and some Canadian teams you can get behind. CTV National's Scott Hurst joins us live this morning with more. So, Scott, I know Leafs Nation is still recovering from what happened Saturday, but which Canadian teams are left, and what are their chances of going all the way to the Stanley Cup?
Good morning, Nick and Jen. Bragging rights on the West Coast. Yeah, unfortunately, a familiar feeling for Leafs fans after that really heartbreaking Game 7 loss in overtime. But out on the West Coast, this starts in Vancouver on Wednesday. Canucks, Oilers, the last two Canadian teams standing, and they'll have bragging rights as the last Canadian team standing ultimately, as ultimately one will go down and one will move on to the Western Conference Final. So we are guaranteed at least one Canadian team moving on. Now, you guys know that I spent a lot of time in Vancouver, getting a lot of messages from friends out there in Vancouver, and I can say there's also a lot of Edmontonians living in Vancouver, so this will be quite a competitive series. Vancouver swept the season series against the Edmonton Oilers. They finished relatively close in the standings. However, Edmonton had a bit of a better road in the first round. They were able to close out their series faster than Vancouver did, and ultimately when puck drops on Wednesday, the Edmonton Oilers will have had a week off between round 1 and round 2. So this is all about Canadian bragging rights. Vancouver and Edmonton, it gets underway on Wednesday, guys.
Okay, so that's the National Hockey League. What about PWHL? Because there will be some playoff hockey in Toronto starting very soon.
Yeah, playoff hockey in Toronto starting Wednesday as well. PWHL Toronto, the top team in the league. 4 teams move on to the inaugural PWHL playoffs. That's Toronto, Montreal, Boston, and Minnesota. And as I mentioned, the Toronto series gets underway on Wednesday. The playoffs will consist of 2 best-of-5 semis and a best-of-5 final. Now, here's the interesting wrinkle in the inaugural PWHL playoffs is that Toronto, the top seed, gets a chance to choose its opponent between the 2 lowest seeds. So we'll find out, I believe, today who Toronto will pick as their opponent, and that series gets underway on Wednesday. And tickets for that game, tickets for that series also get underway today. So you can snag a ticket to the playoff hockey in Toronto. Fortunately not for the Leafs, but a really exciting time for PWHL Toronto.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, they are certainly on a roll. Okay, CTV National's Scott Hurst joining us live. Thanks so much, Scott.
Thanks, guys.